Hello and welcome to another episode of Raw Politics. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're doing fine. I'm also okay. We begin with breaking news. Rigathi Gachagua has called off the so-called Gen Z demos. He did this following the remarks by the president after the president said enough was enough, that he was not going to entertain anarchy anymore in the country, and that those who think that they can remove him from office through anarchy should think twice. He actually dared them. And so Rigathi, as you know, his character, he quickly called a press conference to give a rebuttal. In this rebuttal, he said the usual things: Ruto is this, Ruto is the devil, Uhuru was better, Uhuru was an angel, Kibaki was better, the usual things. And after saying all that, he denied that they were interested in removing Ruto from office through unconstitutional means, even though his so-called Gen Zs were on the street singing halftime and openly saying in media stations that Ruto cannot be allowed to serve a full term, that he had to be removed. Rigathi ally Kalonzo Musyoka was categorical, and he said plainly that they needed only 3 more demos, violent demos that is, and Ruto was going to leave office. So the president dared them, and I think Rigathi took notice and decided to call off the demos. And this is not straight. This is not the first time Rigathi Gachagua is calling off the Gen Z demos. In the demos of June 2024, you saw him saying, "My sons, my daughters, it is enough. Now you can go home." And miraculously, these so-called leaderless Gen Zs who are not affiliated to any politician spontaneously left the streets. So he's been controlling the Gen Zs. We've known that. Any rational Kenyan knew that the Gen Z was just a creation of Rigathi. Nothing more than Kikuyu youths pricing and rebelling with Ruto for very petty political reasons. But then they have struggled to make it look like it is a national thing, that everybody is tired with Ruto. But then, and then they spared no effort at trying to do this, even trying to jump on every issue, every unfortunate thing that happened in the country. They would use it, amplify it, and use it to make it appear like the entire country was against Ruto. Anyway, like I said, he called off the Gen Z demos and urged them to join him in the opposition as if they were not already with him, and register as voters so that they can constitutionally ensure Ruto is one term by 2027. In this video, I'll share with you 3 reasons why I believe Rigathi Gachagua called off the Gen Z demos. If that is a topic you're interested in, stay tuned. And if you're watching this channel for the first time, take a second, subscribe. It is free, but then you will be notified whenever we produce videos of this nature. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, Rigathi Gachagua has called off the Gen Zs from street. I am very persuaded that there's a likelihood that they will obey that you will not see destructive demos moving forward. I want to start by thanking him for that. Because if you follow this channel, I have maintained, whether it was during the Azimio demos or today, all these so-called Gen Z demos, I have always maintained that there is no political demo that will end peaceful. There will be loss of lives, there will be destruction of property. And that is the nature of political protests, whether it is in a third world country or even a developed country. Whether the demos are in Hong Kong, they will turn very violent. People will lose lives. Property will be destroyed. Recent case scenario, you saw in the US, the demos in Los Angeles, political in nature, became very violent. These people were burning police cars and looting shops. It had to take the intervention of the military to bring back order. That is how political demos are. And so when anyone tells people, mobilizes them to go to the street, they know at the back of their mind that this will lead to destruction of property and death. And that is why I've always opposed any call for demonstrations, whether it is being done by Azimio, whether it is being done by Rigathi. I have always rejected those calls for demonstrations. Instead, I've always proposed that the best way to get things resolved in Kenya, where the leader that has complaints, that has issues, can just call the other leader and then they sit in those five-star hotels, discuss whatever they want to discuss and agree without actually using people's sons and daughters to settle their political scores. And for calling off the Gen Z demos, I agree with Rigathi Gachagua. I want to make that very clear. My brand of politics is that I don't oppose you for the sake of opposing you. Yeah, so when you do something that is right, something that I have been calling for, there is no way I again turn and oppose you. On calling off the so-called Gen Zs from the street, I actually thank the former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. But like I said, there are reasons why he did this. There are things that pushed him to call off the Gen Z demos. One, the so-called Gen Z demos, like I told you, were painted as a national uprising, that the entire population that is between 12 and 27, that is what Gen Z is, were tired with Ruto. Every Gen Z was tired with Ruto and wanted him gone. And so they tried to push this, but as time went by, eventually it was very clear that these were just young Kikuyus being used by politicians uprising against Ruto. You can remember that you would see thousands of them on the way from Kiambu, some of them in Kitengela, some of them in Rongai. Just Kikuyu-dominated areas is where you saw all these problems, even the looting, even the destruction of property. It was in their area. So eventually, every sane Kenyan would see that these were just Kikuyus uprising against William Ruto. I want to repeat that there is nothing wrong with Kikuyus rebelling with Ruto. That is the cost of democracy. In a democracy, you can't force people to support you. Even if they oppose you for very petty reasons, it is their constitutional right to oppose you. And so on that, I have no issue with them opposing Ruto. I said, and I will repeat, I have no issue. The issue was trying to make it national, trying to rope in virtually everyone, using every unfortunate event in the country to try and make this look like every section, every part of the country was rebelling and uprising against Ruto. That failed. It flopped badly. And there is no way Rigathi could recover from that. There is no way he would convince Kenyans again that this was not a Kikuyu affair. Attempting to play victim, claiming that those who are saying they were just Kikuyus uprising, are tribalist, are trying to profile the community, are trying to come up with a 41, I don't know against what. Those ones did not work because every time they called these demos, people saw them live. Their own media was doing them, was not doing them a favor either because they would expose where they were coming from. To them, they thought this was to show the strength of their mobilization, but everybody could see that they were just coming from Mount Kenya. So once Rigathi realized that every Kenyan had seen that this was just some Kikuyu youth uprising, he knew that this thing will fizzle. And so he had to call it off, to save face, by the way. The second reason why I think Rigathi called off these demos is because he could not control the outcome of these demos. You see, I started by telling you that every political demo will mostly end up in violence, whether it is in Kenya or whether it is in Europe, because emotions are always very high. And this violence, when the police comes in, there are people who will want to take advantage and fight the police. Some of them will die. But there are also others who would feel like, I am struggling, I don't have this and that, yet it is available here. And in the midst of this chaos, I can actually get what I've always been desiring. So somebody will just form a group, get into a supermarket, loot everything they want to loot. So those happen. Unfortunately for Rigathi and these demonstrators, these things were happening in Kikuyu lands. Okay? They were looting Murang'a, looting Nyeri, looting Kiambu. Most of the things they were looting belonged to their own community members. And attempts to try and say these goons were imported from I don't know where was not going to work for long, because you even saw the owners of this property saying that some of the people they were seeing were their former employees. Yes. So it was not going to work for long. Hashtags, kindergarten hashtags like "we are all Kikuyus," "stop profiling us." Those people were imported to come and destroy the community, to paint us as violent people, or to paint us as goons. That Ruto is doing all this to destroy the Kikuyu businesses. That was not going to last long, because you could see the people who were looting, that they were just locals. And I've told you, this is what happens in politics. I remember in Kisumu, this is what happened when they went to the street. After they fought the police, when they are going home, these people went to supermarkets, looted the supermarkets dry. They would go to banks and destroy the banks. It is not as if Kikuyus were transported from Murang'a to go and loot in Kisumu. It's not like that. It doesn't work like that. Foreigners, I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, even though perhaps some of us have watched too many movies that we are into conspiracy theory all the time, I want to tell you that it is very difficult, nearly impossible, to bring people, total strangers, to Meru to go and loot a supermarket with that confidence. And looting the supermarket is where now you are carrying a fridge. So where would that person put the fridge? Nairobi, on the other hand, was barricaded. They could not come to Nairobi. So if these people came from, let's say, Kisumu, and they were transported at night to go and destroy Kikuyu property to make them poor because Ruto hates them, where were they going to take these things? Nowhere. So Rigathi realized that very soon is kindergarten narratives of we are being profiled and people are fighting us for no reason, that we are very meek people, we are peace-loving, the people you saw destroying your property are not our youth. Our youths are... No, that was not going to last. So he realized, let me save face, let me stop this thing. Because very soon, I tell you, one thing was going to happen. Kikuyus were going to turn against Rigathi Gachagua. Yes. Because once you destroy people's business and you are giving them kindergarten narratives like it is not us, people are imported from us, yet they could see there's people who are looting from their property, it was not going to last. People are going to start turning against Rigathi Gachagua. And Rigathi Gachagua loves to be loved. So he had no otherwise but to call off the demos. The third reason, in my opinion, why Rigathi had to tell his Gen Zs to get off the streets had to do with the realization that his strategy was not working. You see, the initial plan was that you make the country ungovernable through endless violent demonstrations. So it was going to achieve two things. Make it impossible for Ruto to focus on delivery, paint Kenya as unstable, a country that has issues, and with people dying on the street as a result of violence with the police, the international community was supposed to jump in and start condemning President Ruto, or even put pressure on him to resign. Alternatively, they were to gather a huge crowd of, let's say, 100,000 or 1,000,000, and then just march to State House and remove William Ruto. He realized that this is impossible because on their so-called anniversary, they could not go to Parliament and ban it, and of course, they could not even dare go to State House. They were blocked, and all they did was to go back to their homes in Kiambu and other places and loot the place dry. This so-called Sabasaba that they were now hanging on because they had become so desperate that they were looking for any occasion to be on the street, this so-called Sabasaba that they went to hang on also showed how incapable these so-called Gen Zs were, because they could not even get to Nairobi. They could. So all they did, they made their frustrations known by looting their own areas. So Rigathi, realizing that it is impossible to achieve the two things, cause anarchy forever to the point that Ruto is distracted, or just march and remove him, he had to call off his Gen Zs from the street. Those three, in my opinion, are the reasons why Rigathi Gachagua called off the Gen Zs. What do we expect next? Like I say, I have a strong feeling that you won't see these Gen Zs on the street, and I'm not basing this on just feelings. I told you that in June of 2024, Rigathi did the same thing through a presser. He said, "My sons and my daughters, it is now time to get out of the street." And like I told you, miraculously, these leaderless people left the streets. What they did instead, they took all the bitterness and took it to social media. So anybody who supports Ruto was now being trolled. Sijui wanasalimiwa, they leak your numbers and send you very nasty abuses and etc. And that's all they did until they had another reason to be on the street, which was, I don't know, anniversary. I think for the time being, most of them are going to be very bitter on social media, especially the inciters, those who depend on these people being on the streets for purposes of making money. The NGOs, the so-called activists, that they are not going to be very happy. And but generally, I am persuaded that we will have some relative peace with nobody on the street in the foreseeable future. Maybe later something might happen, but I'm very hopeful that they would listen to their owner and just be better online and spare our streets so that people can interact and go on with their usual business. That is what I believe in, ladies and gentlemen. If this made sense to you, let me know in the comment section. Don't forget to like and share the video. And like I said, if you are not subscribed yet, just take a second, subscribe. It is free. Otherwise, in case you missed the video where I advised my brothers and sisters from Kikuyu land not to allow Rigathi to mislead them, watch it here.